Good morning, and what I want to talk about this morning is how to game share on the Switch and play multiplayer games together with the person you're game sharing with. Before we get started though, there is one thing that I need to mention, and this is really important, and that's that you do not want to do this with anyone who isn't either an extremely close friend or a family member. And the reason I have to stress this is because you are sharing your account details when you game share. So you don't want to be game sharing with somebody that you don't really know or someone you've met on the internet or anything like that. And I know when I've done this about other consoles, PlayStation and Xbox, people have moaned at me, why are you going on about this? But it is really, really important. So I just wanted to get that one out the way. Right, so anyway, now we've got that out the way, let's get into the detail. First things first, the first player or the primary player has to have their Switch set as their primary Switch. Now, the way you can tell if your Switch is your primary Switch, and I've already made videos about this, but I'll just do this quickly, is if you go down and you go into the eShop, and then you go into your account, and then you go across to the top and you click on that. You should see your account details, and then you can go all the way down to the bottom. And if you see here, it says this console deregister. Now, if it's not your primary console, deregister will be grayed out. So only if it's your primary console will it be set so you can actually deregister it. I don't want to deregister this one because this is my primary console at the moment, and I want to show you how to do this using this as my primary console. So we can go out of there. So let's go back to the desktop. Right, so once you've established which is your primary console, you then need to make sure that your second player has an account set up on the first player's primary Switch. So as I say, we've just checked and made sure that this is my primary Switch. So if we want to use another user, we would need to make sure that they were on the Switch. So as we can see here, Johnny Test, which is one of my test accounts, is actually set up on this console. And if we go into Johnny Test briefly, if we go down to user settings, and check account information, family group members, we can actually see that Johnny Test is part of my family group. So let's just go back to the desktop. Now, the reason this is important is because the second user has to either be part of your family group, which means they've got an internet connection or a Nintendo Switch online connection as part of your family group, or they would have to have their own Nintendo Switch online account. This is only going to work in those two situations. They either have to have their own Nintendo Switch online account, or they have to be part of your family group. If you try and do it without them being in your family group and without them being part of Nintendo Switch Online, it will just fail. The next one is that the second player has to play on the primary console. So if I'm going to be using Johnny Test, Johnny Test will have to be playing on this console because this is my primary console and not on my second console. The first player, or the primary player, me in this instance, Joe Chip, can play on any Switch they like, as long as they're logged in with their account details and that they have an internet connection. Again, if you don't have an internet connection on the secondary Switch, this won't work. Obviously, if you're playing online games, then you're going to need an internet connection anyway. But even with offline games, this is going to be a problem. And I actually made a video about this the other day, talking about how you can't use your secondary switch even as the primary user if you're not logged on. So that's a little bit of a pain in the neck. So, okay, hopefully that's all clear. And let's go in and show you what I mean. You can actually go in and play together. So the game I'm going to choose is Fast RMX. So I'm going to go into Fast RMX and I'm going to choose Johnny Test. As I said before, this is Joe Chip's primary console. Johnny Test is going to be playing on Joe Chip's primary console. So we load up Fast RMX. And so we've got Fast RMX loaded up and we want to go into multiplayer. And then go into online communication friends. Now this is going to be different obviously for each game because they've got online set up in different ways. But this is how you do it in Fast RMX. So click on that. And then I'm going to just choose any old machine. And it says starting multiplayer. Okay, so I'm just going to choose the first track. And as you can see here, it says Johnny Test and it's looking for other players. So now, if you can see here, I've got my other console set up. And I'm going to select Fast RMX on there. And I'm going to choose Joe Chip. This is my secondary console. And I'm going to play as Joe Chip on my secondary console. And as you can see, I'm going to go into multiplayer again. Just turn this down. Select multiplayer. And go down to online communication friends. Choose the same one. And it's starting multiplayer. And I'm going to choose the same track. And it's there, look, you can see on my first console we've got Johnny Test and Joe Chip. Welcome to and they're both playing. And as you can see, I can play on this one. And I can play on this one. So, hopefully, that is some use. So anyway, let's get out of that for the minute. And close the software. And what I want to do now is show you what happens when you try and do it when you're using an account that isn't part of the family group or doesn't have its own Nintendo Switch online account. So if we go up and we look at Glimmerung's page, this is another test account I set up. If I click on this one and I go down to user settings and then I go down to check account information. And then family group members, you'll see that it's not a member of my family group. And neither does it have a Nintendo Switch online account associated with it because I'm not buying two of them. Certainly not at this stage. So what happens if I try and play Fast RMX with Glimmerung's account on my primary Switch? Goes into the Fast RMX OK, so I can play Fast RMX as a secondary user who hasn't got a Nintendo Switch Online account. But what happens when I go into multiplayer? Let's do online communication friends again. Please wait. And then it comes up with this. A paid membership to Nintendo Switch Online is required. So, because this account isn't associated with my family group, it can actually play online, even though you can play with the account with games. Well, I could play Fast RMX to my heart's content offline. So if we go back from there, if I go into Championship, this should work fine. And it's loading up. And as you can see, it's loading up perfectly fine and it should run perfectly. I was holding the button there. But as you can see, that works as long as I'm not trying to play online. So you do need to be associated with the family group or have a Nintendo Switch Online account for the secondary player. But anyway, I think that's it. I don't think there's anything else to talk about there. It's a bit of a palaver. As I say, just going through what you have to do again. The first player has to have the Switch set as their primary Switch. The second player has to have their account set up on the first player's primary Switch. And the second player has to play on the first player's primary Switch, if that makes sense. The first player can play on any Switch as long as they're logged on and they have an internet connection. So hopefully that will help you set it up. It's relatively straightforward, but it does take a bit of getting your head round. So let me know in the comments if you've had any problems with this. Ask me any questions because I've spent quite a long time trying to work this out, and there's quite a lot of misinformation out there about how you have to do this, and a lot of people are saying you have to set up a third account and all this kind of stuff, and you don't. You can do it with 2 accounts as long as both accounts have Nintendo Switch Online or the second account is part of the family group. And the second player has to play on the primary Switch of the first player. Oh, bit of a palaver, I know. But anyway, as I say, I hope that one helps. If it does, let me know in the comments. And if it does, give us a thumbs up as well. Anyway, I'm going to go and grab myself a cup of tea. And I'll speak to you guys in the next one. Bye.